it's a beautiful night in this neighborhood. So many people have helped me to come to this night.
What if I told you that Fred Rogers, the beloved host of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, revealed surprising truths about the show just before his death? Not rumors or scandals, but real behind-the-scenes stories of emotional moments, creative tension, and a powerful episode that PBS almost refused to air. Stay with us as we uncover Fred's final words, hidden challenges, and the lasting impact of his most personal confession. Daily rituals and unseen tension. Fred Rogers began every shoot at dawn, long before cameras warmed up. 5:30 meant quiet laps in a small YMCA pool near the studio. He moved slowly, counting strokes, letting cold water clear his head. Afterward, he sat alone, eyes shut, talking to no one and timing soft breaths. The morning finished with a weigh-in that had to read exactly 143, his private code for I love you. Back at the studio, the crew watched for those numbers like weather forecasters reading clouds. If Fred stepped on the scale and frowned, everyone braced for a heavy script day. A bright nod meant lighter topics and smoother takes. Seasoned grips whispered that the scale ruled the call sheet more than the director. Even new interns learned fast that numbers on that dial set the show's heartbeat. Rogers never walked straight to the wardrobe. First, he crawled under the set walls to tweak props himself. His main target was a tiny traffic light that hung above the model street. It had to face the camera left, not right, so kids saw stop before go. Union carpenters joked about the preacher with a wrench, but cleared space all the same by 8 a.m. Fred's sweater was buttoned, and the light shone the way he felt children needed it. That harmless fix often clashed with a tight shooting clock. Moving scenery meant overtime warnings and paperwork nobody loved. Yet Fred traded minutes of his own screen time rather than drop the adjustment. The compromise became a ritual handshake between host and crew. No memo ever recorded it, but every stagehand knew that the traffic light settled nerves better than any coffee run. Once the set stood ready, real tension met the PBS stopwatch. Rogers insisted on full 60-second silences that let children think. The network's schedule begged for 22-minute slots, with no dead air. Floor director Kathy Borland counted those seconds with a red cue card behind the lens. Offstage accountants counted lost underwriting dollars just as closely. Two kinds of clocks ticked, and only one could win each day. The silent stretches unnerved sponsors, but Fred treated them like oxygen. Studio kids sometimes fidgeted, unsure if filming had stopped. Borland flashed handwritten reminders telling them to breathe slowly until the host spoke again. Editors trimmed elsewhere, shaving seconds off song reprises or puppet entrances. Fred's stillness stayed untouched, holding the line against the rush of television noise. Unease rose when pauses stacked across takes, yet something else kept spirits light. Between setups, an audio tech rolled out a scuffed skateboard left behind by a guest. One rehearsal morning, Fred hopped on, cardigan flapping, and rolled past the camera dolly. The move froze every adult, but lit up the child extras. He later explained that gentle balance matters more than speed, a lesson lost when the wheel caught a cable and jammed footage for good. The incident triggered a union note about unsafe stunts, yet it also birthed an unseen crew tradition. From then on, a small sticker of that skateboard hid under the trolley track, reminding everyone that calm art can still tilt toward bold play. This forgotten story, buried in rehearsal logs, shows Rogers testing limits quietly while guarding his message. Beneath the friendly sweater lived a craftsman juggling clocks, cables, and quiet moments, determined that each choice, big or tiny, served a child's growing heart. behind Daniel Tiger's soft voice was Fred's deepest pain, until a real tragedy forced him to abandon the script entirely when puppets carried real tears. Inside the neighborhood of make-believe, the puppets did more than entertain. They taught feelings kids had no words for. Fred Rogers slipped his hand into Daniel Tiger and instantly softened his voice, letting worry and wonder take center stage. A second later, he could grab Lady Elaine, flip tone and posture, and let stored frustration burst out in playful jabs. Veteran crew expected these flips, but new puppeteers stared wide-eyed at the speed of change. They whispered later that it felt like watching two people share one heart. Daniel Tiger served as Fred's mirror for self-doubt, asking timid questions that children often kept secret. Each paw, tremble, or sigh came straight from moments Fred remembered as a shy boy in Pennsylvania. When Daniel feared trying something new, Fred was really showing the kids his own cautious side. This honesty made the puppet trustworthy, never too polished or perfect. Viewers sensed it and leaned closer to the screen. Lady Elaine Fairchild, by contrast, released the tension Fred carried but rarely showed on camera. Her sly grin and spinning arms let him push against rules without breaking them outright. Crew members joked she was the safety valve that kept the host from exploding under pressure. While Daniel asked for comfort, Lady Elaine demanded change and challenged unfairness. Together, they balanced the emotional temperature of each episode. Mid-take voice jumps demanded razor-sharp focus behind the set wall. One hand controlled the puppet, the other moved a lever, and Fred's brain shifted gears faster than the studio clock. The effort left him sweating under hot lamps long before the day's lunch bell. Yet he insisted on doing every puppet himself, believing that children could sense fake handovers. That choice shaped a culture where authenticity beat convenience every time. The most charged moment arrived on a Tuesday when national news broke of a kindergarten shooting. Fred read the update, walked to the script rack, and tore the pages clean through. Silence fell as shredded paper floated across the floor. He announced they would improvise because grief cannot follow cue cards. Standards and practices scrambled down the hall, clutching legal binders, unsure how to clear words they had not read. Cameras rolled anyway, capturing raw conversation between Daniel and King Friday about sudden loss. No pre-approved lines guided them, only genuine trembling in Fred's throat set the pace. Stagehands wiped their eyes while keeping booms steady, knowing this tape mattered more than perfect framing. The improvised segment stretched past its slot, running almost 3 full minutes over schedule. Producers counted seconds like pennies slipping from an open hand. Network executives quickly fired off a directive: cut 90 seconds or forfeit the episode. Fred listened, looked at the rundown, and offered another path. He removed 2 musical bumpers and trimmed a playful trolley ring, preserving every word of the grief talk. Young writers later called it the barter that saved the silence, a story shared in training rooms across PBS. That simple swap proved that respect for children could outsmart rigid clocks. A softer secret lived between those tense days: the forbidden lullaby. During breaks, Fred sometimes sang a gentle song about divorce only to the crew children visiting the set. He believed the tune was too heavy for national broadcast, worried it might deepen the hurt rather than heal it. He stored the sheet music in a labeled envelope marked "Only if asked." The lullaby slept unheard by the wider world for decades. After Fred's passing, archivists cataloged boxes and found a single-track tape of that song, recorded quietly one afternoon. The melody felt both sad and safe, naming fears many kids feel when families break apart. Trustees released it online with a note explaining why Fred waited. Timing matters as much as truth. Fans now use the lullaby in counseling circles, proving his caution and care carried weight. In holding back a song, he showed that responsible art sometimes means choosing silence until ears are ready. These layered choices, voice flips, unscripted grief, quiet barters, and a hidden lullaby reveal how the neighborhood was never simple fluff. It was an emotional classroom where puppets cried first, so children watching could breathe easier afterward. Every risk Fred took aimed at that single outcome. Kids would learn their feelings had names, and those names deserved space. Behind the calm set walls, real tears watered lessons that still grow today. The week the neighborhood cracked. The nation first met Fred Rogers, the advocate, during his well-known 1969 Senate plea yet for children's television. 25 years later, a quieter but sharper fight arrived without cameras. In spring 1994, PBS delivered a memo saying the neighborhood budget would be cut in half. The letter landed while season 25 scripts sat on the rehearsal table. Fred suddenly faced a choice between firing friends or shrinking the world kids trusted. The memo listed numbers without feeling, yet everyone sensed trouble as whispers moved through the hallway. Costume designer Barbara mapped which seamstresses would lose work if money vanished. Prop chief Lenny tallied puppets that might be retired once foam supplies stopped. Fred circled the phrase, stating certain set pieces were now viewed as non-essential. That single red ring signaled he planned to fight, not fold. Weekends usually meant rest, but that Saturday, the workshop buzzed like a storm shelter. Foam turrets from King Friday's castle were yanked off frames and traced onto shipping boxes. Artists painted cardboard gray, drawing marker bricks that bled under hot lamps. The change saved cash, yet bruised morale harder than any rumor. Painters clocked out past midnight, leaving a lighter castle that felt heavier to everyone. Monday brought a studio audience of school children eager for royal pageantry. When the curtains opened, they saw sagging walls and peeling paint where sturdy foam once stood. A few began to sob, wondering if the kingdom had been harmed. Fred kept smiling until the cameras stopped, then slipped behind scenery and cried into a towel. A production assistant's diary later noted that the host finally cracked, just like the cardboard towers. That afternoon, Fred tucked a small vial of lavender oil into his sweater pocket for calm. During the closing song, he stumbled on the lyric about making each day special, voice catching mid-note. For the first time in 25 years, he asked the crew for another take. Cinematographer Bill lowered his lens in silent shock. Everyone understood the cardigan shield now showed seams. Anxiety followed Fred home, sparking sleepless pacing around his study. At 2 a.m, he left a voicemail for his therapist, admitting fear of letting children down. The tape, released after his death, marks the only recorded moment he questioned continuing the show. Even inside, he worried he had to hunt for a plan to protect the team. That resolve pushed him back onto the soundstage before sunrise. On Wednesday, executives arrived expecting quick signatures on downsizing forms. Instead, they found Fred on the studio floor, chalking columns of numbers like playground hopscotch. He demonstrated that keeping artisans saved money long-term by preventing costly rewrites and reshoots. Each dollar is linked directly to a child's learning moment, removing cold abstraction. Chalk dust covered his palms, yet his argument stood clearer than any spreadsheet. The lead executive paused, wiped away half the cuts with his shoe, and promised a review. By Thursday, an amended budget restored 40% of the threatened funds. Layoff notices were shredded, and foam orders returned to the carpentry inbox. Crew members hugged briefly, then reset lights without missing the production clock. Fred thanked no one aloud, instead drawing a heart around the chalk math. before leaving for the wardrobe. Hidden within that victory sat a gesture revealed only years later. Fred had written anonymous checks to launch a scholarship for young puppet builders at a nearby arts college. He believed fresh hands should never fear budgets when shaping stories for children. The fund later produced artists who now craft sets for modern educational shows. Discovery of those checks in 2019 estate papers added another layer to his quiet legacy. The week the neighborhood cracked proved even gentle worlds face hard math. Fred's tears, lavender oil, and colored chalk turned budget lines into human stakes. His rescue of jobs and future storytellers showed that advocacy never stops after one famous Senate speech. Viewers never again saw the cardboard castle. The foam turrets returned firm and bright. Yet every crew member remembered the hollow thud of cardboard, a warning to guard wonder with everything they had. Mr. Rogers' calm world hid stress, sweat, and runaway trolleys, and a crew that learned to cope without ever breaking the spell. Crew camaraderie and on-set coping hacks. Every afternoon, the crew formed a tight circle near the craft table for what they called neighbor time. Camera operators, puppet wranglers, child supervisors, and set painters each offered one quick joy and one worry from their day. Fred listened with folded hands, eyes on every speaker, giving silence its own respect. When the final person finished, he closed the 12-minute huddle by summarizing the room's shared mood in one plain sentence. That single line became a compass everyone trusted before the lights flashed back on. The ritual built sturdy bonds that stayed firm when schedules squeezed. A lighting tech might admit missing rent, and minutes later, a prop carpenter discreetly covered the bill. A puppeteer grieving a parent found casserole trays stacked in her car. Wrapped. Small actions sprouted from those honest minutes, turning a workplace into a support web. Crew veterans later said the circle kept the show's kindness real, not just scripted. Music helped too, and audio engineer Bobby Rawls guarded the cure on a hidden cassette deck backstage. Between takes, he pressed play on soulful Motown tracks that drifted through the rafters. Bass lines shook dust loose while horns lifted sagging spirits. Production logs marked exact times for song breaks because the mood boost reliably reset focus. Even children in the gallery swayed, unaware that the groove doubled as stress medicine. Color codes added another silent signal system. Fred's cardigan palette never happened by chance. Each shade forecast the episode's tone. Red meant an upbeat story with light questions, while navy warned of heavier feelings ahead. New interns quickly learned to read the sweater before scanning the call sheet. Costume tags even carried cue cards reminding the wardrobe of the emotional plan. Cardigans and playlists worked hand in hand on rough days. If navy wool appeared, Rawls reached for a slower track to match the theme. Grips turned down banter, and puppet voices softened by instinct. The method felt unspoken yet exact, proving that emotional safety can ride on small, predictable cues. Guests often sensed the harmony without understanding its parts. Behind that harmony stood unsung champions who rarely faced a camera. Floor manager Margie Whitmer, nicknamed the Vibe Guardian, kept zip-top bags of bubble wrap in her apron. Whenever a child grew fidgety, she offered a square to pop until nerves passed. She also timed restroom breaks with military precision, so no small bladder ruined a perfect take. Fred trusted her watch more than the stage clock. Grip Mike Big Bird Sanders wore knee pads from crawling under the trolley track hundreds of times. A hairline warp in the rails made the car stall without warning, but Mike's quiet wrench work fixed it before the directors even noticed. He logged over 200 silent saves across 12 seasons, yet his name never rolled in credits. Crew shirts later carried a stitched trolley wheel in his honor. He shrugged off praise, saying smooth rides mattered more than applause. A fresh insight surfaced in 2022 diaries. Camera loader Jess Yates designed a hand signal code for anxious kids who forgot lines. She tapped her elbow twice for slow down, brushed her chin for speak up, and circled her thumb for smile. Children read the signals like secret Morse code and regained poise without stopping the scene. Producers kept the system after Jess left, proving that small inventions make lasting change. Her pocket notebook of symbols now sits in the show archive. Season 24 tested every safety net when the trolley received an over-generous oiling during maintenance. On its first run, the little car shot past the castle, leaped the rail, and skidded toward a lightning stand. A tech dove aside, scraping his arm but saving the rig. Fred halted filming, checked the crewman's cut, then asked writers to craft a safety episode around the scare. Titled Rails and Redemption, it aired weeks later, teaching viewers that even friendly machines need careful checks. Late in each shoot day, the team held a second micro-huddle called Gear Quiet. Lights dimmed, monitors muted, and everyone stood still for 30 silent breaths. The pause reset tired minds and reminded adults to model calm before heading home. Stagehands said those breaths felt like washing sawdust from the brain. No schedule ever cut the practice. It saved more time than it used. Script supervisor Elaine Price added another unseen safeguard by logging every unexpected child reaction in a green notebook. She flagged moments when a puppet pause or cardigan color drew deeper responses than planned. Writers reviewed the notes weekly and adjusted future stories to mirror real feelings caught on tape. That feedback loop turned live surprises into stronger lessons. The notebook, worn and taped, now serves as a training tool for new educational shows. Long hours, tight money, and delicate topics could have cracked lesser teams, yet this crew thrived through coded sweaters, soul music, bubble wrap, silent breaths, and quick-thinking notebooks. Their coping hacks turned pressure into shared purpose, letting the neighborhood stay gentle on screen while gears whirred wildly behind curtains. Every trick carried one aim: to protect the space where children learn to name feelings safely. In that unseen hustle, the show's true family lifted the heaviest load together. Final tapes and Fred's quiet confession. The last production week in February 2001 opened with calm purpose. Fred arrived before sunrise, carrying 3 note cards marked Thank, Pause, and Trust. He slipped one card into his pocket for each shooting block. The crew noticed he touched the card before every take. The silent ritual framed the countdown slate more than any director's cue. Monday focused on goodbye scenes, yet no one said the word. Fred's energy stayed steady, though his walk showed hidden strain. The note cards guided him like traffic lights, only he could see. Each card returned to his desk with a small check mark. By evening, the stack formed a silent progress chart. Tuesday brought early edits, and producers flagged a missing element. The shelved Loneliness episode, cut years earlier for being too heavy, still bothered Fred. He insisted it join the final package without delay. Editors warned the schedule would burst. Fred nodded, replaced the pause card with a fresh trust card, and kept rolling. Network leaders hesitated, citing sponsor comfort zones. They offered a shorter highlight reel instead of the full story. Fred listened, then stepped into the voiceover room for a single-take address. He explained that some feelings sting, yet bring healing when named aloud. The message ran for 6 minutes and ended with a simple thanks to viewers. That address introduced a new insight unknown until the archive release. Fred included a slide of a child's drawing found tucked inside a seat cushion. The art showed a lonely stick figure waving at the trolley. He used it to prove that real kids already felt the theme sponsors feared. The slide stayed in the master tape, untouched by later cuts. Wednesday's schedule tightened, but the crew rallied. Audio levels locked, and the loneliness segment landed in the timeline unchanged. Editors trimmed unrelated musical stings to recover space. Fred's earlier barter tactic worked again without argument. The finale now carried every frame he deemed essential. 2 months before his passing, Fred booked a private booth session. He recorded a 12-minute audio note for viewers who had grown older. The log carried 3 clear truths he wanted sealed until after the air date. First, he stated the set held only human grief, never ghosts. Crew sadness, he said, occasionally settled like dust on camera lenses. He labeled his long silences a protest against non-stop noise. Television, in his view, trained minds to fear quiet. The pauses were lessons in patience disguised as entertainment. He believed children deserve practice in stillness. The card marked "Pause" now felt like a mission badge. Also, he admitted that every puppet argued with him at least once. The disagreements, voiced by his own hand, kept him honest. Lady Elaine challenged him when scripts felt safe. Daniel Tiger questioned him when fear lingered too long. These mini-debates sharpened each message before it reached children. Joanne Rogers sat outside the booth, following every word through headphones. She jotted margin notes on a yellow pad, writing only. He finally said it. Her handwriting trembled, yet showed relief. Engineers logged the session, then locked the reel inside a fireproof cabinet. The pad stayed folded in Fred's Bible until her passing. Back on set Thursday, Fred's health dipped. Yet this focus never wavered. The thank card surfaced more often, tapped after tough takes. Cast members sensed the countdown to goodbye. Still, laughter filled breaks as trolley bells rang on cue. The atmosphere mixed celebration and quiet dread. Friday's final scene wrapped before noon, yet Fred lingered. He hung his cardigan on the peg used since 1968. Running his fingers over the worn wool, he straightened the trolley track one last time. He whispered the familiar farewell heard by millions, then stopped and looked back at the empty living room. That silent glance, later noted in a stagehand's diary, became the show's true ending. With cameras off, crew members moved in hushed patterns. Lights lowered, cables coiled, and the model skyline slid into crates. Editors rolled hard drives to a fire-safe vault, triple copying every frame. On the workbench, 3 note cards, thank, pause, trust, rested beside the cardigan, each bearing 2 neat check marks. Joanne slipped them into a plain envelope and tucked it under her arm. No speeches followed, only soft scrapes, a distant vacuum, and the click of the main breaker as the neighborhood dimmed. 3 weeks later, the master tapes traveled to PBS by insured courier. The once rejected Loneliness episode preserved exactly as recorded. Engineers inserted a single-frame tribute for Fred, who kept the light red and sealed the reels. His 12-minute audio confession remained locked until after his death, posted quietly as a web special. Listeners heard his 3 truths. The set held grief, pauses fought noise, and puppets argued for honesty. Streams soared past 1 million plays within days. Therapists began using the clip in sessions. classrooms paused lessons to discuss silence as courage. Podcast hosts, parents, and former crew traded stories online, reviving his gentle challenge. The final tapes closed a chapter, but the cardigan, the cards, and that blinking red light keep teaching. Long after the studio emptied, Fred's quiet confession still invites viewers to slow down and feel seen. Each rewatch proves his farewell was not goodbye, just an open door to kinder conversation everywhere. Mr. Rogers whispered truths the world wasn't ready for. Now, his locked drawer tapes may hold his final lesson. How one confession keeps echoing. After the final tapes were locked and sent off, editors added a silent tribute. Just one frame at the end held a message that only careful viewers would catch, for Fred, who kept the light red. It was a nod to the tiny traffic light that always glowed red on set, reminding everyone to slow down and listen. During teardown, one crew member noticed the bulb still blinked, even with the main power off. That small light became a symbol of Fred's impact, still flashing in a room now empty. The influence spread fast. Writers for Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, a spin-off aimed at a new generation, began building long pauses into the script. They called them feelings breaks, stretches where a character sits with emotion instead of fixing it right away. That idea came directly from Fred's style, honoring his belief in the healing power of silence. Even the team behind Bluey cited Mr. Rogers in their early pitch materials, pointing to his way of letting moments breathe. These choices weren't about copying, they were about continuing something that mattered. Within the industry, something deeper shifted. In 2004, children's programming began hiring on-set counselors. This wasn't random. It traced back to an internal PBS memo quoting Fred's confession about grief soaking into the set. The memo argued that if Fred could recognize hidden pain during puppet shows, the least networks could do was offer real-time care. By 2008, multiple kids' shows included hotline numbers after tough episodes, something Fred never had the chance to do himself, but clearly pointed toward. A new thread emerged years later. In 2024, during a family archive project, Fred's grandchildren found 3 film reels in a locked drawer marked "For Tom." Each reel held raw footage never shared publicly. According to family sources, they weren't about puppets or scripts. They were personal messages from Fred to his son. The tapes remain sealed for now, but there's growing talk of turning them into part of a holographic exhibit. If that happens, it could be the most intimate look yet at what Fred believed children and grown-ups needed most. One producer who worked on the original show said the light red dedication wasn't just about pacing, it was about permission. Fred gave everyone the okay to stop and think, to feel something without rushing to fix it. Today's creators still lean on that model when writing scenes that deal with divorce, loss, or big changes. They see what Fred did not as slow TV, but as strong TV, strong enough to handle real feelings. What's rarely known is how many kids' therapists now use Fred's episodes in their sessions. They pause the tape right where Fred paused. Then they ask the kids what they think he meant by the silence. The answers they get are often more honest than any question could pull out. Fred didn't just teach kids, he left a playbook for the adults, trying to help them now. As for the blinking light, the physical bulb was removed during a studio remodel. But one crew member took it home and kept it in a shadow box. At his retirement party, he passed it to a young editor who'd grown up watching the show. That tiny glass lens now sits on her desk as a reminder that even in quiet, something powerful can be happening. When Fred recorded that last booth session, he likely didn't imagine how many policies, scripts, and shows would trace back to his 12 minutes of truth. He never asked for credit, just clarity. That clarity sparked a cultural shift. It didn't come with fanfare. It came with one sentence at a time and one pause when it mattered. And in 2024, with 3 tapes still unopened, Fred's voice isn't finished just yet. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Click on the next video popping up on your screen for more amazing content.